to add, don't we? So this is about to get considerably more complicated. We could be doing a whole lot of create element, append child, and stuff to build all these buttons. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to do it a different way. Dom, you did it a different way? What'd you do?
I used iterate to know right when I created the list to add all the items.
Okay, kind of like what we did at first on the last project, right? Just make kind of a big template string that puts all that stuff in it. We could do it that way. But we already know how to do that, and we want to learn new things. Repetition is good too, but let's learn a new way. Like that solution, what I really want to do is I want to be able to just write the HTML. How about this? Let's go ahead and put a list item that looks just the way we want in the HTML, but let's hide it. And then we want to add a new one. Let's make a copy of that one, put our data into it, and then unhide it. Tricky. Yeah, that's a good trick. Let's do it. So we could put it inside this UL. We may be sorry we did later, but this is probably the intuitive thing to do. Let's just put one inside the UL. So that I can find it easily, I'm going to give it a class of flick. In case we have other unordered lists on the page, like a menu or something, I want to make sure that I'm finding the right LIs. And I'm going to give this a class of template too. That's not a magic word, but it's how we're using it. So I kind of like the idea of identifying it as a template by giving it a class of template. So I'm going to make an LI with the class of flick and a class of template. And we're going to have the name of the flick in there. And we're going to have a bunch of buttons. We could, if we put all these buttons in here, let's just make one of them. To add the name to this, we could do like an insert before to insert it before the list of buttons. I think it would be a little easier if we just made a span where we could stick that. So I'm going to put a span in here and give that a class of flick-name. It's going to be empty. This is just a template. There's no actual data. Then which button do you like better, remove or the other one? He likes delete. Anybody like the other one? Let's do the other one because delete also has to manage our data in a slightly different way. I don't know. It doesn't matter which order we do it in. Promote was listed first in the homework, I think. So I'm going to do it first. Okay. Yeah. It has no inherent semantic meaning. So it is the inline equivalent of a div. So HTML elements are either block level or inline. Blocks are things like paragraphs, things that take up the whole width and that have blank lines at the end of them. But a paragraph means something like a paragraph is a piece of text. That's a word that exists outside of HTML. If you just want a generic block level container, div is that element. So spans are things that you can put like in the middle of a line of text and it won't create a new line afterward. Like if you want to italicize something or you want to add a link to the middle of a sentence. Those are inline elements. And if you want a generic container inline element, span is your friend. So it's meaningless, but it's inline. So we're going to use it here. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to give this button a class of promote or fave or something. Fave. Whatever. Mm-hmm.
So when you do the span there, you're basically wrapping the button in that?
No, so the span ends right away. There's nothing inside the span. What I'm doing is giving myself an easy target for later. That's where I'm going to put the name of the thing. So putting an empty span there just gives me something that's a little easier to find
Okay.
because I can just change the text content of that. Yep, just giving myself an easy target for later. So we've got a button. Anticipating that I have more than one button coming, and it might be valuable to have them all inside some sort of container, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I'm going to put another span here with a class of actions, because that's what all these are. These are actions that I can take on this flick. So now I have an empty span where the name will go, and I have a span with a button in it. We discovered the other day that Foundation will style your button a certain way if you give it a class of button. So I'm going to give it a class of fave and a class of button. So right now, if we did that, there will be one item there that has a button. So we don't want it to actually show up, right? And we don't really want it to have a bullet either. So we can manually set it to have no bullet in our CSS. Foundation actually has something like that already. Let's see. Would be under controls or typography or content navigation, containers, lists. Where do you suppose it puts lists? Let's just search. Lists. Okay, so that's like searching the API. I know what it is. I just want to be able to find it in here to show you. Helper classes, typography helper classes, that could be it. Unbulleted list. In Foundation, the UL is a bulleted list by default, but you can add the class no-bullet to remove the bullets. Okay. Typography helper classes is where you can find stuff like this in the documentation. So if on the UL, I just had a class of no-bullet or bullets, bullet, singular. Class was no bullet. Refresh the page. That goes away. And it's no longer indented either. But this is just a template. We don't actually want it to appear on the page yet, right? So in my custom CSS, I'm going to add a rule for that. We don't have any custom CSS yet. How do I want to identify things that I want to hide? I think that template class is pretty good, right? So anything that has a class of template, I don't want to show up. So I'm going to say visibility hidden. Was anybody tempted to put display none? Is that a thing you guys know about? Yes? Or do you have a question? Okay. Is it bad? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. Anybody know the difference?
Visibility keep the amount of space that you need, so the object will still be there if you just can't see it.
It's still there. It's just not visible. Display none means it's kind of not even there. It doesn't necessarily leave the space for it, but it is in the DOM. That node is in the DOM. Display none actually leaves it clear out of the DOM. So visibility hidden is kind of more what we're after here. All right. So how do we make a copy of this and put our data into it?